Good morning and welcome to our first training of our little Costa Rica incentive. Really, this is just a business training. Just thought it'd be fun to have everybody on. I see that Marlena is walking on a treadmill. Marlena, are you walking on a treadmill? That's awesome. And I love that you're walking on a treadmill and I'm sitting here in a lazy boy rocking back and forth. So there you go. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you so that you can see my presentation. But today we are going, there's my birth story if anybody wants to see it. Somebody says they need the Zoom link. All right, hang tight. Will somebody post the Zoom link on the Costa Rica thing and tag Kim Wint in it for me? If you wouldn't mind, that would be really awesome. She's looking for the Zoom link. Okay, I'm gonna pull this open. We're gonna talk about sampling. So you guys check this out. I picked the one that has the water drops on it because I feel like it looks like little samples, little drops from samples, which I love. So we're just going to start from the beginning and go right through this. So I've learned a lot about giving samples over the last 8 years. First of all, when I first started handing out samples, I didn't know that sample bottles existed. And I literally would give out samples in my old bottles. I'd open up the bottle and put in a few drops of the oil that I wanted to give a sample of because I didn't even know about sampling. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know that they even had those little mini sample bottles. So I'm going to teach you some of the things that I have learned over the last 8 years that have helped my sampling to be a little bit more effective and cost effective too. And how it can be a tool for building my business instead of something that's just holding me back. And what I mean by that is I think sometimes people get caught up on, oh, I'm handing out samples, I'm building my business. And handing out samples is a great thing as long as it's turning into enrollments. So I'm going to talk about some of the basics. So first of all, I wanted to talk about the logistics of samples. First of all, the best thing you can do is make all of your samples at once. And you can get, in fact, I have one right here. I'll show you. I just barely ordered it this week. I am taking this with me to Africa this week, but it's one of these nifty little sample cases. I like these for two reasons. First of all, I am limited on space, on how much I can take to Africa. I have to pack in a duffel bag, and it can only be 30 pounds because we're going on an airplane that after we get to Africa, we're chartering another little airplane. So you can make up some of your favorite samples and just put them in this handy little case and have this with you at all times. You can put your basics in there, you know, lemon, lavender, peppermint, On Guard, Breathe, just the basic things that you hand out a lot of samples of. It's also good for you to always have your oils with you. And, you know, a lot of times I'll just have one of everything in there, and I've been known to hand those out when I travel. So it's nice to have your samples all made up at once and make sure that you have them with you. Or you have a nice organized spot where you know where everything is. That's helpful. You want to make sure that you have a list or spreadsheet of everybody that you're handing out samples to. So you can either have, like, it doesn't have to be fancy. If computers aren't your thing and they intimidate you, just have a notebook. I have a notebook right next to my bed where I'm showing you guys all this stuff, where I keep notes of, you know, people that I've given samples of, when I've handed them out, etc. So you can do a notebook, you can do a Google Doc, you can do an Excel spreadsheet. It can be, you know, whatever you want. It doesn't need to be fancy, but you'll want to make sure that you're keeping track of the people that you've given samples to so that you can follow up. So the next question might be, okay, so who do I give samples to? You know, again, sometimes it feels good just to hand samples out because you feel like you're moving forward in your business. Well, handing samples out doesn't move your business forward. Getting enrollments moves your business forward. So you want to make sure you're handing samples to people who will enroll or who are likely to enroll. So I like to give samples to influencers. Now, this is the riskiest person I give samples to, meaning they may not sign up, but you know if they do that they're going to sign up 12 other people because they're going to tell everybody they know about these samples. So, you know, giving somebody, and I've even been known to give an influencer a diffuser and loan them my oils for a week just because I'm like, man, if I can get them on board, they will share this with everybody that they know, and this will really help my business to grow and help people to be more healthy because they're using oils. So I like to give samples to influencers. I love to give samples to people that I know are interested. For example, somebody that's like, yeah, I've been wanting to try essential oils and I just, you know, haven't known where to start. That's a great person to give a sample of an oil to. But I'm going to give it the caveat in just a couple slides. You always want to make sure you're setting up a follow-up appointment with them. And then people with a strong need. You know, like the neighbor lady whose daughter kept getting bloody noses. She had 3 bloody noses in one night. And typically, I'm not one to ever give out samples of helichrysum. I did it once, and I learned my lesson just because I felt like the person didn't end up using the sample, and I literally gave them a $25 sample of helichrysum. But this poor neighbor lady, I thought, you know what? It's not always about money for me. And this poor woman is completely frustrated with her poor little girl's nosebleeds. And I knew that the helichrysum would help with it. So I just gave her the bottle of helichrysum to try. And I said, why don't you try this out, see how it works? And we actually ended up setting an appointment and she ended up enrolling. But somebody with a desperate need is always a good person to give a sample to. And honestly, for me at that point, I don't even know that it becomes about my business, but really a humanitarian thing of if you see somebody in need and you can help them, why wouldn't you? So that's the people I give samples to. And I also want to talk about who I don't give samples to. I have just given out samples. I've done challenges where it's 30 samples in 30 days, or, I've done little incentives where if you hand out 2 samples today, you get points. That's great and dandy as long as you're giving samples to effective people, because otherwise you're wasting your money and you're going to frustrate yourself because people aren't going to sign up. We've all had the experience where we've checked in with someone and they've told you, I don't have time to use my sample, or, yeah, I think I got those. I need to find them. And you're thinking, you're literally throwing away liquid gold, and it's frustrating, So you want to make sure that you are giving samples to people who want them and will use them. And again, my risky thing on the list that I put was influencers. Now, when I give samples to people, I always pre-qualify. I want to make sure they're not already enrolled. I want to make sure their mom is not already a diamond in doTERRA. I want to make sure that it's somebody who is eligible to purchase an account and somebody who will purchase an account if they like what I'm giving them. So I don't want to hand out samples just for the sake of handing out a sample, because it gets frustrating. And I think we give plenty of samples out that nothing becomes of it, and we don't want to continue adding to that. We want that to actually diminish. We want to hand samples out to people who are going to use them and love them and want to sign up, right? Okay, so what do you give samples of? I like to give out samples that are simple, inexpensive, and they come with fast results. Like I said, I have given out samples of helichrysum, frankincense, some Slim and Sassy. Hello, what was I thinking? Slim and Sassy is a great oil, but you're not going to get a weight loss results with 20 drops of Slim and Sassy when you hand someone a sample of that. So I like to give people, and I'm upfront with people. If they just say, hey, I'd love to try something for weight loss, I'll say, you know what? doTERRA does have a great oil that can help with that. However, the sample size I'm going to give you, you're not going to see instant results. And I want to give you an experience so that you can see how effective and easily these oils can work. So I like to give samples of like peppermint, lavender, past tense, digestion, breathe, balance, things that people are going to use and get instant results from. Those are all they kind of go without saying. I'm still quite not sure what to give someone a lemon sample for. I know it smells good and it's great in water. But again, I want to minimize some sort of pain in their life instantly. And I know balance can do that because it can help you relax you. Breathe can help clear up sinuses. Digestion can get rid of a stomach ache. Past tense can get rid of head tension. Lavender can help calm, soothe, help you sleep. Peppermint, we all know that can do a lot of amazing things very quickly. So I like to give samples that I know are inexpensive and then come with fast results. Don't be like me. I've handed out a few bottles of helichrysum and frankincense, and it's always a very kind thing to do. But a lot of times people don't know what they have, and I've had people say, oh yeah, I'll say, hey, have you tried that sample? And they'll make the comment, oh yeah, I haven't had a chance to use that yet. And I'm thinking, I mailed you a $25 sample. So do something that's inexpensive, but that comes with good results. How many samples should you give out? 1, maybe 2. You don't want to supply somebody with an entire stock of essential oils with samples. Honestly, people will learn to rely on you more and more. The more samples you give them, they'll think, oh, well, next time I need something, she'll just hand me samples. And we don't want you to be their drug dealer. We want them to come to you for figuring out how to empower it and help themselves, not for you to supply all their oils. So I'll give people 1, maybe 2 samples. And it can be tempting. You think, okay, well, if I give them this, and this, then maybe one of these will work. But I find a lot of times the more samples I give them, the more overwhelmed they get, and then they don't use them at all. So I like to give them 1 or 2 samples and keep it really simple. Another thing is I always like to, if they come back and ask for another sample, I will tell them you are welcome to purchase a sample for me. I can give you the price per drop, and I always make sure it's retail price list so you can see how much that sample would cost you. But I'd also like to show you how I can get them even cheaper. Some tips for sampling. Only give 1 sample. Now, here's the key thing that I really want to hit in terms of handing out samples is when you hand out a sample, you want to make sure that you're setting an appointment with that person or inviting them to a class. Don't just like open-endedly hand somebody a sample. just because a lot of times, I mean, think about how many samples you've handed out and how many of those people have come back and enrolled. Definitely some of them do, for sure. But a lot of times, the enrollments happen from setting up an appointment, not even handing out a sample. And a lot of times what I've noticed is my sample is a crutch for getting the appointment set. So I could have gotten the enrollment or the appointment without even handing a sample out. But I think in my mind, I have that, okay, if I hand him a sample, it's an excuse to talk to him and set him an appointment. That's great. If that's helpful for you, then great. But I've showed up to so many appointments where people haven't even used their samples yet, or they'll bring the samples that I've given them, and they're like, how do I use this? So make sure that when you're handing out a sample, you have an appointment set up in the future, or you're inviting them to a class, so that it's going to increase the likelihood of them purchasing, which is why we're handing samples out. Make sure you get their information. I don't even worry about handing out my business card. In fact, I rarely have them with me because I have never had somebody contact me back off my business card, ever, in 8 years, ever. Not that it won't happen in the future, or not that there's not a slight chance that it could. It's just people don't contact you. I want their business card. I want their information. I've had a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I met this person. They're signing up. They're so excited. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so great. Did you get their information? And they didn't. They have theirs, but they don't have the person who they've been working with, their information. They rarely call back, even if they were super excited when you met them. So make sure that you always have their information. And in fact, sometimes I like to get their information so I can send them a sample. It's like that's the way of me getting their information. Make sure when you're handing them a sample that they know exactly how to use it, and keep it very simple. Again, this is why you want to limit how many samples you're handing out. If somebody is telling you that they're really congested, hand them a bottle of Breathe. And sometimes I'll even hand them a little index card with instructions for how to use it. Rub on your chest, put on a cotton ball, put it on your hands, smell it. But I give them really simple instructions for how to use their oil. If the more complicated it becomes, the less likely they are to use their sample, because they're going to be like, this is just too much for me. So keep it really simple and make sure that they know how to use it. Now, there will be some people that you hand out samples to that don't want to set an appointment, and that's okay. For me, when I'm handing out samples, I realize that sometimes those people aren't going to sign up, and that sometimes they'll never talk to me again, and that's okay. I like to minimize that as much as I can, but I still want to make sure that I'm making contacts with people. And some people really do want to try something before ordering, which I understand. And we've all had the experiences where we've handed someone a bottle of Balance and they've said, oh my gosh, I want to buy that. And then that's a great opportunity to set up an appointment or invite them to a class to learn more. So, when people use them, it is a very effective tool. So make sure that you're following up after you hand out the sample. I like to do it about a week after. And if it's something that they had, like one of those desperate people, and what I mean is desperate where there's a desperate need, I like to follow up right away. How did you do? Did you get sleep last night? Did that bloody nose stop? How is your respiratory issues coming along? But typically I wait for about a week. If they're like, oh man, it works so great, and you haven't set up an appointment, at that point, set up an appointment and just say, hey, I would love to help you learn more about these oils. And I'd love to hear more about you and your situation and your health concerns, and see if there's some other things that might be helpful for you. Again, that's when you can let them know that they don't need to buy anything, but if they see something they like, that you'd be happy to help them. It's a really great time to just put their mind at ease that, look, I'm here to help you. I want to see what's going to help you and your needs. But if you don't see something you like, don't worry about buying it. It's okay. I let people know right up front. Now, if someone says, it didn't really work, I still try to set up an appointment with them and say, oh my goodness, that has got to be so frustrating. Let's find something that works for you. In fact, I'd love to come over and look through my book with you and let you smell a couple of things and see what we can do to help you get feeling better. So I don't shy away from it and say, oh, I guess that didn't work, or, I don't act embarrassed. I don't anything like that, because sometimes it didn't work because they didn't really use it, or they just smelled it, or they put a tiny drop on once and that was it. So I like to set up an appointment so that I can see what's happening, so that we can come up with a solution that's going to help them. And then I also try to add in some extra tips. So, okay, so tell me how you tried the oil. Okay, so you used it once. That works. But what I find works better is that when you're going to use it every hour, whatever. So make sure that you give them other ideas about how to use it, and then set up another time to chat with them. So those are my tips for following up with samples. Again, my biggest piece of advice is that sampling is not an income producing activity. enrolling people is. So when you are handing out your samples, just remember, is this leading me to the next step of the sales funnel? Am I going to be able to get an appointment set up because of this sample? Am I going to be able to get this person to a class? If the answer is no, don't hand out the sample. If the answer is yes, then of course hand the sample out and show them how to use it. Because, you know, handing out samples for me has never increased my paycheck, but enrolling those people has. So we're using it as an effective tool, especially for all of you guys who are working for, all of you guys that are working for, you know, just getting 2 enrollments a month, or even getting an enrollment and 1 person on LRP a month. You're going to have a partially paid for vacation. So use these little tips on sampling to make that happen, to get some more enrollments. There are a few other things, of course, I always think as soon as I'm done with my PowerPoint. There are some other things that you can do. If you're trying to catch the interest of people using a sample like kind of as bait, one thing that you can do is, you know, instead of saying, hey, who wants to try an essential oil? You can say, who would like a more restful night's sleep? Who would like to get through the cold and flu season with power? You know, I don't know. You have to say things that are compliant, of course, but I like to talk about very specific things and then give them a sample that would help with that specific piece of information. So instead of saying, who wants to try essential oils? That's great. What do they do? Say, who wants to sleep better tonight? You're going to get more of a response, and then you can give out your samples accordingly. So again, sampling is not an income producing activity, enrolling people is. So make sure you're using it to your advantage. And I would love to open it up to any questions. Any questions? No?